Assalamu alaikum and good evening, everyone. Welcome to, I think it's the episode 6 of Fine Leg, where I've got a special guest here for you guys today. He's a new entrant to the Islamabad United family, but both with his bat and with his stuff off the field, he became part of the Islamabad United family this year. Dawid Malan is here with us. Davey, how are you, man?
Good, thanks, and thanks for having me. Looking forward to having a bit of a chat.
Yeah, that's the one thing we've been lacking the last 2 months, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is. Just seeing people. It's amazing how you take things for granted. Just being able to see people, see friends, see family, and then suddenly something like this happens in the world, and you can't even do the basic stuff, which is see people that you've seen every single. So it shows you how lucky we are. Normally, I know we moan a lot, myself included. I moan quite a lot about it, but when you actually think about it, we take so much for granted.
Yeah, you were the first guy, I think, with a week or so to go, even in the PSL playoffs. You were the first guy who brought out the hand sanitizer, and everyone was like, "Is Davey being a little too extreme right now?" And within like 4 days, everyone was like, "Davey foreshadowed what was going to happen."
But I wouldn't say that. I think I became a little bit obsessed with reading things on social media and on Twitter and reading the news and things. And getting the reports and things back from London. I sort of jumped a little bit on the bandwagon. You could almost see with what was happening in other countries that it was going to happen sort of everywhere. It was going to carry on or catch on all over the world. So it was disappointing that we left as we did, especially with that sort of one group game left. But yeah, it's ultimately as bad as it sounds. You have to look after your family at certain times.
I think
I took my hand
Yeah, go ahead.
sanitizer. There you go. I couldn't even say the word. Took my hand sanitizer with me. Got on a plane. I must say it's the first time I've ever got on a plane and literally wiped every single bit of the seat, the screen, every single thing I wiped down. So I made sure that everything was safe.
Yeah, and I think that was the right thing to do. You were mentioning like your family and stuff like that. I think the one thing that we've really realized over the past 2-3 months is like where everyone's priorities ought to lie. But anyway, we can now talk about like happier times. So usually when to start off, I talk to guys about their experiences of being in Pakistan. But you've been coming here for quite a while. I mean, I was looking back, and you were part of the first group, the Zalmi guys who won the PSL 2. You were part of that. So talk me through first making the decision to come back then and then continuing to come since then.
Yeah, it's been a long journey actually. So 2017, it was 2017. Yeah, we sort of knew the final was going to be in Pakistan in Lahore. We weren't obviously sure if we could make the final, and then when we did win that game, the semi-final, the playoff, I think it was, we sat down as the overseas player with Dawid Afridi at the time. Who sort of gave us his assurances that all the safety would be in place. Obviously, we'd spoken to a lot of other people. We'd spoken to Reg Dickinson from the ECB about what he thought the safety measures and what have you were. So we made sure we got all of that in place first, and then we sat down as a group of overseas and sort of decided that if we're one in, we're all going to be in. We're not just going to allow or sort of have one of the overseas to travel and the rest sort of go home. So we made a decision, the four of us, led by Darren Sami, who was obviously fantastic in not only initializing that, but also like pushing us as players and pushing the people from the PSL to look after us equally as well. And it's been amazing how time has moved on from there, where everyone's traveling now. But initially, just that big step that we took enable other people to see how good the security was. I don't want to go as far as saying we were the guinea pigs, if you want to put it that way. But by actually showing that we are able to go to Pakistan and play cricket safely with all the security measures. And I must say the security measures are unbelievable. What the government does, the army, the police force, the PSL, what the individual franchises do to make sure that we're safe as players is absolutely astonishing to see how well it's organised and run. And then it was just a natural succession from there where everyone started to jump back on board and wanted to come to Pakistan to play. The Pakistan Super League is one of the best in the world, one of the strongest, especially as a batsman, facing those Pakistan bowlers that bowl pretty quickly and with the spinners they've got. So, it's a tournament that people want to be part of. So it's fantastic to see, especially now, how well it's progressed to getting so many people or so many overseas players to play in Pakistan and have the tournament in Pakistan, which is fantastic for the people.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you more than most prefer like it moving from Dubai and Sharjah to Pakistan, because the pitches there are far more suited to your style of batting, which is, you rely on hitting through the line on natural timing, and which isn't the easiest thing to do when you're in Dubai, right?
Well, I enjoy Sharjah. Sharjah, I really enjoy. That's a lovely.
Yeah.
It's very small, that ground, so I don't mind it there. I actually find Sharjah very similar to the wickets in Pakistan. They're a little bit skiddier, whereas at the Dubai stadium it's a little bit slower and more tennis ball bounce, which doesn't allow you to hit straight as often, especially with the skill that the bowlers have got. But no, thoroughly enjoyed batting in Pakistan. The wickets were good. They were really good. It's probably the first time I played a tournament where consistently the wickets have been good every single game. There were a few wickets, maybe one or two. I think there was a Lahore Qalandars game where it turned square in the first innings. I think Samir Patel took 5 or 6, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But apart from the wicket, the wickets were fantastic to bat on. It was 160 to 180 to 220. There were so many good scores. So I don't think the bowlers enjoyed it too much this season.
Yeah.
But we as batsmen thoroughly enjoyed batting in Pakistan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to talk to you about your own career, but one of the things that you just mentioned, like about the Pakistani fast bowling and stuff like that, one of the things that you pointed out to me during the PSL was, which has been one of my bugbears as well, and which I sort of feel like we need to talk to the fans about it as well. So in Pakistan, when we think of like a death bowler or death bowling, it's like it translates to bowling Yorkers. And whenever we were watching matches, you would always turn to me and says, why do all of these guys always go for the Yorker when it's not necessarily the best thing to do? So, like that sort of thing, is that something that you noticed this year, or is that something that over time you start to feel like this is something that these guys do that perhaps doesn't happen so much in other leagues?
I wouldn't say it doesn't happen as much in other leagues. I think it's almost like, so the way I always look at it is, if you're in charge of a game as a bowling team, and what you've done well for 15 overs has worked really well, and you have a team 120 for 4 or for 5, why change what you're doing straight away? So my view is keep doing what you're doing for as long as you possibly can, which has worked until the batsmen start hitting you off those lengths. And once they start hitting you off those lengths, then you can go to your Yorker. But it's almost a universal thing that as soon as you get those last 5 overs, no matter what the score is, we're going to go Yorkers. And people, the way the batsmen bat these days, and the grounds that you found, I mean, grounds are getting smaller and smaller, wickets are getting better and better, batsmen are getting more and more powerful. That if you miss 2 Yorkers and over, like the best in the world, the Pollards, the Gales, the Butlers, these guys, they hit it for 6. So suddenly you're looking at 12 and over off just those 2 balls. Apart from Malinga and a few others in the world, there's not many guys that hit 6 out of 6 Yorkers or 5 out of 6 Yorkers. It is still the hardest ball to hit, but you have to be able to nail it at least 5 out of 6 times to limit the damage in the over, which becomes really tough. But if you can have that skill, and that's something that Waka Yunus and Wasim Akram was so good at doing. I didn't play against them, but I've watched all the videos, and to see how good they were at it, it just shows you that the Pakistan bowlers look up to those guys, and they're their heroes, and that's something they did exceptionally well. So I can see why they were doing that. Even Shoaib Akhtar, when he was bowling speed of light, he'd be running in bowling Yorkers with the odd bouncer and stuff like that, which makes it extremely tough to play. So I can see why you follow your heroes and you see what your heroes are doing. But sometimes, the wicket might be sticky, it might be slower, it might be harder to hit if it goes into the wicket. Junaid Khan bowls those slow balls into the wicket exceptionally well, which are very tough to hit on those slow, sticky wickets. But I think that it's hard to say don't bowl Yorkers, it's hard to say bowl Yorkers. I think the key is to try and work out each conditions and to different batters where they're less likely to hit you. And I think that's something that needs the bowlers have to have in their armoury to sort of make it harder for the batsman, because otherwise it becomes a bit predictable. If as a batsman someone's just going to try and bowl 6 Yorkers, you can nick one for 4, you can middle one and it goes for 6, because 5 and they get third man will be up, you can play a lap sweep. So there's always something that you can do, even if they're bowling them very well. But it's still the hardest ball to hit if you hit it, but to get it consistently right is the toughest bit from it.
I think you nailed it with the thing about like trying to copy your heroes, because when those guys played the Yorker, even if you missed it a little bit, you would still get away with it. But now you mentioned like somebody like Josh Butler, but somebody like AB de Villiers, but especially somebody like Darren Sammy, who's almost built to hit against Yorkers. Like that's the ball that he's waiting for. But anyway, like so that I was gonna ask you, like, is that this deconstruction of the game, is that something that you've always had, or is that because like you've been captaining Middlesex, and I'm assuming that you're going to captain Yorkshire as well the last few years? Because of that, you have to develop that sort of a mindset.
So no, I'm not going to be captain in Yorkshire.
Oh,
I've always been a thinking cricketer. It's always something I pride myself on. I like to go into a game having done my homework on the opposition. I like to know what highest scores are, grounds, what average scores are. I like to know the boundary sizes. I like to know who I'm facing. So if there's a squad that's been released of 15 players, I like to look at the bowlers. I like to do my homework on what their change-ups are. So do they bowl slow balls under pressure? Do they go Yorkers under pressure? Do they go into the wicket when under pressure? Do they have a leg cutter slow ball? Do they have an off cutter slow ball? So that, it doesn't mean that you're going to have success, but that means that when you're out in the middle, if you've hit a guy for 4, you can sort of hedge your bets a little bit towards the end, whether he's going to be bowling an off cutter, a Yorker, a bouncer. So you can sort of almost try and be one step ahead without premeditating too much, but just try and be that one step ahead of the bowler. Just as the bowlers will do homework on myself as a batsman, knowing that I'm strong at doing X, Y, Z, I need to know what a bowler is really strong at. And does he go wide under pressure? Does he go straight under pressure? You can look at different fields. So if they have, say, square leg up, he's more often than not he's going to be bowling Yorkers. Is he going to be bowling straight Yorkers or wide Yorkers? That depends on whether the third man's up or back. So you can sort of judge a little bit by the fields and things. But it's something I really enjoy doing, is trying to work things out. So whether I play or whether I'm carrying the drinks, I'm always trying to read what the bowlers are trying to do, what the batsmen are trying to do, what captains are going to do next. That's my way of staying involved in the game and actually learning, because no matter who you are, you're still learning. Every time a game gets played, you watch a batsman and you see something that he does and you think, wow, I've never actually thought about doing that, and it's something you can try. You watch a bowler and you think, oh, he's set this field and he's bowled totally 2 or 3 balls that are totally the wrong ball that she bowled, but it's worked. So you sort of pick up little things and little bluffs and what have you. So I really enjoy that. It's something I pride myself on doing. It doesn't make me successful all the time. It doesn't make me successful in general, because I'm nowhere near the world. But it's just something I really enjoy doing, is breaking down scenarios and little parts of the game.
I think that sort of explains why Misbah took a fancy to you even at Zalmi, but especially at over here. Like the guys used to be like, whenever we were having nets, Misbah and David would be like on the side just discussing batting, like they're discussing like a secret between them. But it's like that's the sort of thing. Like everyone has their own style. Like what Ronks is like. Ronks is just goes out there, does his thing. But I sort of sympathize more with guys like you guys, like Miss. But like when we run the team as well, our mindset is better to be over prepared than under prepared, right? So with that, I was going to talk to you about like your own journey and your own evolution over the past 18 months. So I was looking through your numbers, and like you didn't have the greatest numbers in 2017 and 2018, but the past 18 months in first class cricket, you scored over 1,000 runs at almost 15. The county game, you scored 400 plus runs in the blast, were the top run scorer. You scored 400 plus runs in the BPL. Then you were pretty much the second or third in the top 3 run scorers when unfortunately you couldn't get a game afterwards with Islamabad. And you're like, despite playing what is it, 9, 10 T20 games, you're in the top 10 of the ranking. So what's that evolution been like? The hard work that was put in prior to that, and what changed for you over the past 18 months?
Yeah, so to put it down, so if you look at, I'd like to break it down sort of over a 5-year period, 6-year period. So I'd say 2013, I had a really poor year in 4-day cricket. I did really well on white ball cricket, and I sort of went away and identified what was lacking. So whether it would be fitness, mental side, preparation side, relationship side, whatever it may be, I broke down. There were about 5 or 6 of the things that I broke down, and I had to improve on sort of all of those 5 or 6 things. And as I started improving on those, my cricket started becoming more and more consistent, to the extent that I ended up getting picked in not only the PSL but Bangladesh Premier League and the T10 and the South African tournament. To kept challenging myself and pushing myself to actually try and get better. I had to change the way I played in 2020 cricket to catch up a little bit with the world. When I started off in 2006, you could score 140, 150 and win the game, whereas now, unless it's a poor wicket, you can't do that. So my game's had to evolve over the last probably 5 or 6 years. So I'd say the 2018, I had a really poor run. I was playing Test cricket at the time. I'd just come back from the Ashes, and I was desperate to keep playing Test cricket. And
Can I ask you about that, by the way? Like that's a little weird for me. Like you end up England's top run scorer in the Ashes, and like a series later you're dropped. Like if I was in your position, I would be like, screw this. I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah, so it was more. So we played the Ashes, and we had New Zealand, and then Pakistan arrived, and then India. So I had 2 tests. I had 5 tests after the Ashes. And to be honest, I wasn't playing as well as I should have. The Ashes took a hell of a lot out of me. I was away for 4 months or 5 months at the time. From October through until April. So it was even longer. So I was away. So mentally, I was quite tired, and I was really putting myself under a lot of pressure to make it in Test cricket. I was desperate to do well. More often than not, the harder you try at something, the worse it gets. The more
Yeah.
You almost put it that way. The harder you try, the worse things get. If you're trying to force something, you force it really tough. Or I just moved a bed upstairs actually, and if you're moving that bed and you're trying to force it, it just doesn't move. But if you're a bit, if you try a little bit with a little bit of tact, it's
flexible about it.
Yeah, and so I probably didn't play as well as I wanted, because I wanted it that badly, and that getting dropped from something that you've worked so hard to get to, it does affect you mentally. And then going straight back to county cricket, the next county cricket, and then I went to the Mzansi Super League, and the next probably 5 months or so, I really struggled just with trying to get my mindset right, trying to sort the way I batted out. So then coming back, I went to the PSL after that. Only played 2 out of the 4 games I was involved, got picked in the England squad, and then I went to the Caribbean. I didn't play, but I had 2 weeks literally sitting on the beach, relaxing and sort of getting I'd almost say getting my love for cricket back again by just chilling almost, if you want to put it that way. And I came back to the English season, and suddenly things clicked in terms of my mental side. Everyone talks about your technique and about what this and whether you move your feet and what have you. But if you're mentally strong and you're mentally present, it's amazing how much of a difference it makes. So from then I made a conscious effort to stop worrying about playing for England, stop worrying about trying to get back in the England team. For me, it's about focusing on scoring as many runs as I can for whichever team I play in. And, if that means that I end up scoring a lot of runs to get picked for England, then I get picked for England.
And then you play for England that way as well, right?
Exactly the same way. So, when you're on the fringes for England, you have to make use of every opportunity you get. If you get 2 or 3 opportunities and you don't take them, there's so many good players waiting in the wings that can take your place. So every opportunity you get is just a time where you can express yourself, and that's the one thing about the England setup that's so good, is you're able to express your freedom. You're able to go out there and play the way you want to play, so that if you don't score runs, at least you can walk off and go, it's my fault. I got an opportunity, didn't score my runs, and that's as simple as that. Whereas, before that, you'd almost put yourself under so much pressure, saying, I have to, that you almost are your own worst enemy. So just that freedom, just being able to go, this is the way I want to play. If I want to hit this ball here, I'm going to hit this ball in. If I get out, at least I can walk off saying it was down to myself. So I'd say they're the changes that I've made over the last couple of years. I also made a few technical changes, which obviously are important, as much as the mental side is, just having those basic things that work for you. And going back to what your strengths are, I think sometimes when you get criticized a lot by pundits and by social media and what have you, you start looking at all the things you do wrong, and you're trying to rectify those mistakes that you do. But when you actually get away from all the negative and focus on your positive side, it's amazing how many positives you actually see you have in your game. And when you make those strengths your super strengths, it's amazing how more consistent you can be.
I mean, you mentioned the way the England team plays, and I think that's been one of the things that almost like fans and like people from other cricketing cultures are almost envious of, like how England's gone from like in the 2015 World Cup, they were pretty much behind the best in the world, most of the best in the world, to basically being the vanguard of this style of batting, both in the 50 over game and the 20 over game. And that I think you're the obvious example of that. Like 2014, 15, 16, probably like people would have considered you like the moniker that they would have given you would have been like a top order anchor or something like that when it comes to T20 cricket, not somebody who's scoring the fastest 100 in England history and stuff like that. So how much of the encouragement and the ability to play your own game came from the fact that the culture itself is one that is now responsive to that?
Well, you just look at it. So if I want to open the batting for England, if I want to bat four for England or five for England, wherever you want to bat, you look at the players that have currently been playing since 2015,
Yeah.
and you look at the Roys, the Bairstows, the Hales, the Morgans, the Stokes. So for you to push those guys out, you have to either do a similar role or do it even better to push them out. So if people don't score run for extended period, you need to be able to fulfill that role that they're doing to be able to get picked. Otherwise, someone else is going to get picked. So the way
Yeah.
those guys play, their natural game has forced the rest of the players in county cricket that are trying to play England, play for England. It's forced them to play in a way that can actually push forward the rest of the game. And it's amazing how county cricket's changed. You can see the run rates in the domestic 2020 and the NatWest Blast, how the net run rate's a lot higher in county cricket. I know the grounds are a bit smaller and there's more teams, so it's a bit of a diluted competition to some extent. But it's pushed people to keep challenging themselves to push the limits, and that's the main thing from England cricket is to keep pushing the limits. Is just because they scored 400 in ODI doesn't mean they can't score 450. They're always pushing the limits, and that's what makes and drives them to keep getting better and better and better.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm gonna incorporate some questions from the viewers essentially. The first one that someone asked was, who was your inspiration growing up? Like, who was the guy? Like, everyone has like one or two guys that they're like, that you get into cricket for, right?
Yeah, so I'd always say my biggest inspiration in cricket has always been my old man, my father. He's always been the one that I've looked up to. He got me into cricket. He's a cricket mad, so he's always pushed my brother and I to play cricket. But then from a cricketing point of view, I grew up in South Africa, so for me, I always watched Gary Kirsten. And this is really old school because he was a blocker. And this is before
No,
2020.
we're pretty much the same age, man.
Yeah, well, there you go. So you're looking at the old school version of before 2020, which was Test cricket was the pinnacle. And Test ODI cricket was played in a similar role, really. People didn't really try and hit 400. It was if you got 200, 220, 230, you were in the game. So I used to watch Gary Kirsten as a fellow left-hander growing up in South Africa, thinking, Test cricket, that's what I want to be like. But as the game evolved, people like Mike Hussey, Matthew Hayden, I started leaning a little bit more towards the Australians because they played that attacking brand, that tough brand, and you can't really get past Hayden and Ponting and Mike Hussey and guys like that when they're on song. They were so good to watch. Fortunately for me, I've been lucky enough to play against these guys. So I've played against Hussey and Hayden and these guys. So I've been able to pick their brains. I've spoken to Mike Hussey for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, Sangakkara, these guys that I've looked up to in my career. You're able to pick their brains because there are so many guys that are willing to speak to you about batting. Peterson, all these guys, they speak to you about batting if you ask them. So it's amazing when you actually grab hold of someone, you can get 20 minutes of their time, how much you can learn from them.
And someone just asked about something else. I'm going to come back to that. But one of the things that you mentioned regarding like Aiden and Hussey and all those guys, like, what's that feeling like representing England in the Ashes in Australia with their crowd scoring 100? Like, what's the inner feeling? Is it almost like wanting to get respect from them or wanting to silence them, like the motivation and like talk me through that?
Yeah, so look, the England Australia series, the Ashes, is obviously one of the biggest contests or rivalries in the world. I'd probably say it's the big. I obviously know Pakistan and India have a massive rivalry, but
Yeah, Pakistanis will have issues with that.
Yeah,
Although I wouldn't call it a rivalry if they're not playing each other.
exactly. So because they're not playing each other, I'm just going to leave them to the side to keep everyone happy. But you say
Yeah.
the England-Australia rivalry is the biggest. So for any English cricketer to play Test cricket's a dream, and to play in an Ashes is an even bigger dream. So to be fortunate enough to be able to represent England in Ashes down under in Australia was unbelievable. Before you go, you get talked about the media, about how the media is going to be, how the crowds are going to be, how the players are going to be, how the Aussies are going to be, how everything's going to be. So you build this whole thing up in your mind about how you're going to rock up, and it's going to be the fiercest, harshest environment that there can be. But actually, to be honest, the cricket was hard. There was nothing that was said on the field that crossed the line. The fans were absolutely brilliant. They gave you stick when you needed to get stick. But more often than not, it was friendly banter. There was nothing really that crossed the line. There were massive crowds. The interest that there was some. I know we lost 4-0. We got absolutely hammered. But there were so many tight bits in games where the first test we had Australia 200 for 6 or 7, I think it was, and Steve Smith scored an unbelievable 100 and scored and got them in the lead, and then we got bowled out. But if you manage to get Steve Smith, then we might have a 120 run lead. And I think the series is done. The second game at Adelaide and the lights. We were going into the last day with a massive chance of chasing it down. We messed that up. They bowled fantastically well that first hour and the next morning, but there was a time in that game where we were out of it after the first 2 games, and we worked our way into it to that last game. The way Jimmy Anderson bowled, he bowled a ridiculous spell in the second spell. So there were so many good moments in the Test series, and even the Perth one. We scored 450 and thought we're in with a shout here, and suddenly they scored 680 or whatever it was, and we lose by an inning. So there's so many tight bits in the games where it could have. I don't want to say it could have gone either way, because Australia were by far the better team. But where we actually pushed them really hard, but just weren't good enough to get past those moments. Steve Smith, I think he's still batting against us. It's incredible.
I mean, this summer in England, like I don't think I've ever seen England bat like with that level of comfort. But anyway, so you face that Australian team, you face like you play T20 cricket throughout the world. Someone just asked this question, so I'll break it down. Who's the most difficult bowler that you faced, and who's the most difficult bowler that you faced in the PSL?
Gosh, there's so many in the PSL. I've been lucky enough to play at Zelmi with Wahab. I've seen him bowl some unbelievable spells, and been so thankful that I've been on the same side as him and not against him. He's been one of the best performers in PSL. I didn't face him this year. I think we didn't play a game against. We got a rained off game against.
We played a 9-hour game,
and the shortened game, I faced Nazim Shah this year. I thought he was good. He was quick and swung it. It's really hard to put someone on it. Tanvir is always, a fantastic bowler. He just got so many skills. He can bowl Yorkers, slow balls into the deck, back of the hand slow balls. He's a fantastic. As I'd probably say, consistently wise over the years, he's probably been the toughest that I've faced from a seam bowler point of view. And
overall, like excluding Pakistanis, like who's the best bowler that you faced anywhere?
Overall, I faced Malinga in the T10 recently. I know he's a lot older than what he was, so I never faced him when he was at his peak. So to face him, even though was only bowling sort of 85 miles per hour compared to 90 miles per hour, I found him extremely tough to face. You're always looking for that slow ball. You're always waiting for when's that slow ball coming, and then miss out on a couple of other balls. But I thought he was pretty hard. Dwayne Bravo as well. I thought he's been pretty good. But there's been so many, so many guys that you can sort of name over the years. I've come up against Sean Tate when he's been bowling extremely quick, and that's not been fun to face. I faced Wahab, and then he took 5 for 10 in his last 5 overs of a one-day game, and you're thinking, wow, if you're going to have to face this in international cricket consistently, it's pretty good. So I've been fortunate enough to play against a lot, so it's really tough for me to sort of point out a couple of people.
Yeah, so let's just finish off with like a couple of humor things. Like you mentioned the sledging and the banter. What's the funniest thing that you've heard, whether in county cricket or particularly from the Aussies?
So the Aussies were there was nothing really like well I'll give you so Nathan Lyon you know the whole series that we played against him and he's a good guy, a fantastic guy, like really funny. But the whole series he called me Dale, so he made it his sort of point to not call me by my name to pretend he doesn't know who I am. I wasn't nobody, but he literally called me Dale for the whole series, and I refused to acknowledge him all five. Every time he said to me, "All right, Dale,"
Yeah.
I just ignored him. Every time he said, "Come on, Dale, you're the worst player," or whatever, Dale, you're this or that, you're that. Oh, I'm gonna get you out, Dale. I just literally just ignored him and ignored him and ignored him and ignored him. And then the last Test match, the last innings, Joe Root had a back issue, and I was standing at the non-strikers end while he was getting a bit of physio, and Nathan came up to me and he started speaking to me and he was like, Dale, Dale, Dale. He said something and I just was like, oh, all right, I gave in. And I literally just gave in and I spoke to him for like 2 or 3 minutes. I'm thinking, you know what, it's the end of the Test series. We've got to bat for a day, get through this day, and it's the end of the Test series. Hopefully, save this game. And literally, the next ball I faced at him, he got me out, and that's the biggest regret I ever had was that I actually spoke to him and I've ignored him the whole time. First time I spoke to him, the next ball, so that really wound me up. But I'd say that would probably be my lasting memory from the Ashes, apart from the runs and the batting, but sort of the banter type thing. So I thought that was pretty good.
I mean, that's an extraordinary level of commitment from his part, I would say. Like telling someone.
He did not stop, no matter how many times I just stared at him, how many times I just sort of sat back and I just sort of walked away and turned my back on him. He just kept calling me Dale. Even in the mornings, you'd walk past him at warm up and you say, "Morning, mate," and he'd go, "Morning, Dale," and you'd be like, "He's just not going to stop." And you don't want to say him, "Oh, my name's not Dale," because then he knows he's got you. So you just got to like.
Yeah.
Just like, nah, I'm done. I'm just gonna greet him, and then when the game's on, I'm just not gonna speak to him and just try and blank him. And the one time I did, he got me out. But he got me out a couple of times. But it was just, but that first time I spoke to him, he got me out straight away after that.
All right, I think that's the ideal way to end it. So it was lovely talking to you, Dale.
To speak to you now.
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll end up meeting somewhere down the road, and hopefully there'll be cricket in our immediate future soon.
Yeah.
Best of luck with that. Best of luck with the season.
We need Pakistan to come over if it's safe. I think that's the key. But
yeah,
obviously, I think people's safety gets put first. It's such a tough time, and no one really knows what can happen and what can't happen. But yeah, any cricket would be good. Obviously, if the conditions and safety is dependent.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get some cricket, but based on what England's luck is like, I think by the time there's cricket happening, the weather will intervene then. So best of luck with that as well.
It hasn't rained for 2 months, and it's going to rain every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So best of luck with that. Lovely talking to you.
Perfect. You too. All the best, bud. Bye-bye.
All right. See ya, man.